Welcome back to Bespoke Addict. The alligator skins I buffed, no, I didn't buff, I moisturised yesterday. They've had 24 hours to dry and they've had one coat. And when I bring them up to camera, they look a bit sad, a bit flat. They don't look very exciting at all. That's perfectly normal. The cream, it does leave a residue behind. And bear in mind, we're probably 5% of the process is done. That's one process. I think it's going to need to be done about 20 times over a 2 to 3 week period. Let me just pop these gloves on because I am going to be applying more cream. But before applying more cream, I'm just going to buff them to a slight sheen because there is a residue on the surface, and there is, if you look in between the scales, there's just some surface cream, and that will build up and get worse. This shoe's worse. You can see it's got that orange sort of spidering. So I'm going to chase away any dry residue. It's dry. It's not going to do anything now. So let's just, excuse me, excuse me. Let's just chase that away with a dry brush, and then we'll reapply the cream. And just go through, I need a kitchen roll. Just want to sort of wipe the worst off this brush. Doesn't need to be clean, just reasonably free of surface. Yeah, that's it. And I'll just pull it off the roll. Okay, now, in the first instance, it's fine to use a brush that has got residue on there. In the later stages, when you're really trying to buff and buff and buff, you wouldn't be using that. That would be washed, dried, or a completely new and fresh brush, but it has to be dry. So I'm just going to give it a few seconds and just, there we go. When I talk about buffing, dry buffing, this is what I call dry buffing. And exotic skins, alligator, crocodile, etc. This is all that's really needed. Moisturizer that's dry, and then a dry buff. So we've done, in fact, yeah, that's it. We can only look at one side at a time. So let's give the camera a chance to focus. It's an autofocus, and they don't quite know what to look at. It won't be know whether to look at my blue glove, which I'll move. It tends to, a bright colour. The camera tends to look at that. And then we look at the other side, and it's still very matte, very listless. And that side's got really quite some luster. And you can see what's starting to happen, but that's still very dry. As I say too, we're probably 5% into the process. It needs a huge amount more. So this is what you do though. You just do this every day. Buff away any residue of cream and try and achieve a slight sort of sheen. It's not a gloss, it's not a shine, but got a bit of a sheen that starts to look quite presentable. Anyway, let's just get all the traces away. And I'm just going to apply more like I did yesterday. Let's get that one out of the way. You don't need to see me do both shoes, but you probably don't need to see me do this either. But for those of you that didn't see the videos yesterday, this is for you. There we go. So I'm just once again going to apply quite liberally. And like I said in the videos yesterday, I'm not going to apply it heavily like butter. Paste it on like this, and paste it on nice and thick, and expect to come back in 12 hours and that's all sunken in. It won't. It will not. It'll just dry looking like that, sticky, horrible, goopy, chewing gum type mess. But I'm applying a little bit heavier than I did yesterday. When on the first application, the skins are so dehydrated, it's like blotting paper. It sucks very rapidly, but erratically. And it doesn't draw all of the sort of components within the cream. And certain components are far more readily and easily absorbed. And it takes those first. And then the other components kind of become very chewing gum-like and sticking, get left behind in the surface. So if you apply a small amount of cream, you can control the sort of the capillary action of the draw, so to speak. You can control you can just nurture and encourage all of the cream to be absorbed. that I can apply a bit heavier today, and it's not sucking vigorously like it would have done yesterday on such a dehydrated skin. But of course, you can't be leaving it like that. But I'm just going to go around, agitate, rub and agitate, and just try and. It's a lot slower now. It's just not quite so dehydrated. But you can't rely on a cloth on exotic skins. They're too crinkly, it's too much texture, and the cream clogs a lot between the scales and all into the stitching, obviously, but it's mainly between the scales. You can see we've got like these orange stripes. There we go, let's use that side of the brush, and I'm just going to just use the brush to try and stab the cream, sort of stir it in. There's only so much you can do with the cloth, and you do need a brush. If you try to leave that, it will dry with the residue in the creases between the scales, and it's quite difficult to get it out. So that's perfectly fine, and that will absorb over the next 24 hours or so. You know, it's just a case of being patient. There's no shortcuts to this. People always give me sage advice. Just paste it on thick, you know, slop it all over and come back 24 hours, it'll be fine. It won't. They're mistaken. It makes a dreadful mess. There's no shortcuts to nourishing genuine exotic skin. If you want a shortcut, quite frankly, don't buy alligator, don't buy crocodile. Buy the fake stuff that's pressed. You just wipe it over and it's fine. But if you want the genuine, you need to be patient and treat it well. The other thing is, if you don't nourish it thoroughly, they will split horribly. 100% guarantee. Old alligator like this, you know, without nourishing it properly, will tear here. Probably tear there, probably tear in the heels, but almost 100% certainty if it's neglected for long enough and not treated like I'm doing here, it will tear. There we go. Now that's just fit for another 24 hours. So I'll just leave that overnight, come back to it and give it exactly the same. The dry end of the brush, buff the sheen, reapply. And I'll keep going. And after a couple of weeks or so, it will look like this, but I'll come back to it after 24 hours and it will be sticky to touch. It won't have dried. The skin will be completely saturated and it will have left behind something on the surface. It'll be a little sticky. And at that point, it won't buff. So I'll take a clean cloth and wipe away the excess, allow it to dry, then buff it. We know at that point that skin's completely saturated. I did mention yesterday that obviously the colour is completely different. I discussed that at length in the films yesterday, so I'm not going to go over that again. And there's a lot to say about different creams and different ones that you really shouldn't be using on exotic skins. And this film's getting a little bit long, so I'm going to stop here. But I'm going to try and remind myself when we come and do another film. I'll probably, I'll do that one later, and I'll redo these tomorrow. But you won't want to see the same process. But I'll try and remember to discuss the various creams that you can and can't use on alligator and why.